Views and opinions of any of the guests of After Hours AM are not necessarily the views and opinions of After Hours AM, its hosts, its staff, or any of its affiliates.
Welcome to the After Hours program.
Are you ready?
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Now broadcasting live from the After Hours AM studio, Joel Sturgis and Eric Olson.
Can't shake this terror from my head tonight. Alone and forsaken, I bleed. A twisted vision, a tired mind betrays a victim of shame.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome to this edition of After Hours AM, and happy October. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me,
Eric Olson.
hey Eric, man, how you been?
Well, I've been good, pretty good. I'm very
Good.
excited. We've been saying this kind of week after week since we came back on after our enforced summer break, but we are absolutely teetering on the verge of having our brand new website. which
Not
will
teetering.
combine our august brands,
Not
After
teetering.
Hours AM and America's Most Haunted, into one fantabulous, sensational website. I can look at it right now and see it. There's a couple things left to tweak, and we got to finish with the what do they call it? The DNS population.
Yeah, there's all sorts of fancy net words that they use, you know, when they talk about websites.
yeah.
Just say, does it work?
It just
or doesn't
means
it
they
work?
had to they had to move it from one host to another.
Yes.
So that's what's going on right now. Hopefully by tomorrow even, the site will be up, and it will still be at America's-most-haunted.com, but it will look brand new, and it will also include After Hours AM. So I'm very excited about that because it's been going on for a long time. This is, other than that, been an extraordinarily odd week.
It has been, hasn't it? So what's been odd on your end?
Well, I'll just give you one small example of bizarre oddity.
Bizarre.
Yeah. When I think we talked about it, maybe not because it happened actually back in the summer when we weren't on the air for a while. My parents' basement was flooded. We're here in Northeast Ohio, and this was in the middle of those just torrential July rains where it rained, every day for a month.
Sure.
Finally, the ground got flooded.
Do you mind if I play this music behind you, though? I mean, I think it would set the stage. Keep going. Okay, that's enough of that.
Digging it hard.
Yes.
Old Twilight Zone.
Oh, yes.
Did a show on that lately. That was very interesting.
It was, but
The Rod
yes.
Serling guy.
It was a good show. I mean, there's a lot about Rod Serling we didn't know, but getting back to your personal
so anyway,
problems.
flood in the basement, right? So this is a huge, big house. Not a mansion, it's just a big house. And maybe 10,000 square feet, including the basement. And the basement covers the entire house, so it's huge. And it's just jam-packed because my parents,
With stuff.
especially my mother, are pack rats.
Oh.
And so, I mean, it was absolutely stuffed. With stuff, right.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
Stuffed with stuff. So we had to haul all this out. Oh, my God, it took forever. Actually, to be honest, we're still not finished hauling all the stuff out of there, sorting what we were keeping from not keeping, what could be sold, what were the handful of things that really they did want to keep because
Sure.
they were, important forget-me not items, family memories, so on and so forth. Or they were just had value. So
Sure.
we finally get things more or less sorted out. Among what we found were 8 saddles from a period of not too long, a few years, where my parents owned a day camp. And on the day camp were some horsies. So they had these saddles, old saddles, 50, 60-year-old saddles. We didn't think they were worth much. Maybe, whatever. Who knows? Something, perhaps. My cousin, who's a horsey person, was here for my daughter's wedding. She said, yes, try to sell them.
Yes.
So finally, I got around to cleaning them up, and I turned them in to I'd never even heard of such a thing, a tack shop. I didn't even know what that meant. It's food for horses, food and supplies for horses. So I turned it over to him. He's selling them on consignment. He told me originally he thought maybe he'd get $1,000 for all of them. That would be fantastic, we said. Well, it turned out to be $300. So that wasn't nearly
yeah. I mean, yeah, I was gonna say, were you guys gonna be able to go onto Antique Roadshow or anything, and give them a praise?
They were that old, and they were pretty beat. So I did clean up. I put in a whole afternoon cleaning them. First I used the official soap you're supposed to use for saddles, and then I polished
saddle soap.
Did all this crap.
Yes.
It was really kind of a pain, frankly, and it took a long time, and I felt dirty and greasy afterwards. And there were like parts of horses stuck inside the crevices, what is that shriveled, dried up horse?
I know what it's like to feel dirty and greasy, though. I got you there.
I bet you do. So anyway, finally, all this is dragging on and on and on. And we're finally set up that he's going to get the money, the $300, and he couldn't even sell 4 of them, so he's just going to give those back to us. So meanwhile, this guy, he has grandparents. I don't think he's probably or mid-30s. He's got grandparents in their 90s. They were married. Listen to this: 76 years.
Wow, that's a long time to be married.
76 years. They died within 3 days of each other.
Wow.
Yes.
You don't hear that happening often.
Amazing. Well, the latter, I think, was the grandfather. Literally, they said, died of heart.
Yeah, died of broken heart.
He is very predisposed, or I should say, he is not available to drive up here and give me the money and drop off the saddle. So he turns the money over and the saddles over to his office, whatever, director, the person who runs the office.
All right.
This woman who has worked for him for 3 years.
And they ran away with the money.
She ran away with the money.
No, really?
And stole $500 in merchandise from him.
Your luck, Eric. It's your luck.
So, for temporarily anyway, because he still, frankly, let's face it, has to cover it. Temporarily, I'm out of the money. I was expecting to make a deposit because, we got to keep track of the money, and we don't have a bunch of extra these days. Things are heading in the right direction, but boy, oh boy, it's not back to where it needs to be yet. So anyway, we were counting on this. Of course, don't have it yet. Maybe we'll get it tomorrow, hopefully. So this woman who he'd known, who worked for him every day, probably 6 days a week, because dealing with the horses is a very full-time job, for 3 years, just frickin' disappeared, took off. He's had to file a police report. He's actually pressing charges. They called me to ask if I would press charges. I said, well, I don't think she stole it from me. Isn't it still in your possession? I hadn't taken possession yet. But sure, I'll certainly say whatever needs to be said, because I want you to get the biatch.
Wow,
so,
Eric.
Finally going to meet tomorrow, and he's going to get me the frickin' check, but I got to drive 20 miles or whatever one way. It's just unbelievable. So that's just one example of my week.
Wow, your week has been a little on the crazy side. Mine's been just normal. I mean, just everyday old stuff. I got nothing that odd to report. I mean, be honest with you, I just I did see a really good movie, by the way, and you got to check it out over there on DVD. Or Blu-ray, whichever you prefer. It's called Lost in the Dark. Sorry, Lost in the Dark. It's a campy. Well, it's a new movie. It just came out, but it's shot in 1980s horror movie style. Like, so every cliche.
I haven't even heard of it. That's bizarre.
It's actually not that bad. It's like kind of makes fun of all the.
How could I have not heard of it?
In a serious way, it makes fun of all the classic horror flicks. You know,
Right.
So I mean, you could definitely
A parody.
It's really, and it's not trying to be a parody. It's its own movie. But like, don't go in the closet. Don't go. All that kind of stuff happens. The girls.
I love that commercial. What's the commercial?
The Geico commercial where
Geico where they do everything wrong. Let's go over there and hide underneath all those chainsaws.
Yeah, why not go to the running car?
No, that'd be stupid.
That would be. But this has actually been an odd, tough week as far as news goes. I guess because first off, we're going to talk about the shooting at the community college in Oregon, man. I mean, that's just horrid.
It's kind of getting to the point where we it's hard to gear up the outrage. This is so common.
Well, right now at this hour, 10 are confirmed dead, 7 injured in shooting at Oregon College, Oregon, however you'd like to pronounce that. Oh, my goodness. I mean, 10 people are confirmed again dead, 7 injured in a shooting.
Well, did you hear the most outrageous aspect of all this?
What was that?
I was just watching the coverage just before we came on CNN, and of course they're going all over everything.
Yes.
They know who the guy is, even though they haven't announced it officially yet.
Yeah.
He was announcing all over 4chan, which is, Satan's own message board.
Oh, boy.
I mean, boy. It really is. It is the armpit. It is the pubic hair of social media.
Pubic hair of social media.
It is the worst. It is where the scum of the scum.
Oh,
4chan. You heard it right here. Come and get me, 4chan.
4chan.
Right, so,
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Here's what 4chan did. Here's what they did on 4chan. The guy goes on. He announces exactly what he's going to do. He says he's going to go out. This is it. This is my only chance to be in the news. He said he was going. I don't think he said exactly where he was going to do it. That part I was unclear on. He might have even done that. But he announced what he was going to do. What did the responders on 4chan do? They gave him tips on maximum
You're
body
kidding
count.
me. Instead of turning it in.
I am not kidding you for 1 second.
So instead
they
of
challenged him, they dared him. They said, "Don't puss out," and they gave him tips on maximum body count. Think about that.
Wow. Okay, now just let me wrap my mind around this for a second, Eric. There's a social media network called, what's it called again? 4chan?
4chan.
And
the number 4, then Chan, CHAN.
So 4chan. This guy is all over 4chan, which is the low of the low, the red light district, if you will, of social media. And he's talking about murdering people in the open on this 4chan. And they're telling him, do not wimp out, go after it. Here's how you can kill more people.
Exactly.
That is just ridiculous. And you know what the bad part is 4chan is going to get more people to sign up now because, look, they're going to hit the spotlight.
Oh, it's already very, very popular. See, I think they have, it's anonymous. I think that's part of it. So people go there who are going to talk about stuff that is appalling and wretched in every direction and in every way.
But can't they just track your IP address and figure out who you are?
Ultimately, sure, the NSA can or whoever. Yeah, I mean, of course, if they can track every call ever made by any American, they should be able to track these people down. But that's what they were just talking about on CNN. My goodness, shouldn't there be some culpability here? Shouldn't these people be tracked down and charged with aiding and abetting?
There should be.
Accomplices. They're literally accomplices.
They are. Instead of getting a hold of the correct authorities, they egged them on to murder these people. And this is ridiculous. 10 confirmed dead.
Tips. 10. Hey, let's go for maximum body count.
That's ridiculous. And hopefully that something happens to this 4chan. Because it cannot allow it to continue.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, even in the armpit, pubic hair, butt plug of the internet, that is 4chan, that such a thing could happen, that it would not be spotted by some administrator right away and turned in. Apparently, one responder, gave a phone number, a dial-in for some sort of, hotline.
Okay, I got a question for you, Eric. Why is there no armed security guards at these schools? Why haven't we done that yet? Why haven't we not?
I guess This is a tiny little community college in the middle of nowhere.
No, but what I'm saying is
That's the other thing. How did he end up here, and why did he do it? Well, he just showed up. He's from the Midwest.
yeah, he just showed up, shot up a bunch of people.
Ago.
That's ridiculous. I'm just saying, it's getting to the point where these, especially these bigger institutions, should really have. I realize it's a small community college, but like Virginia Tech, right? Had they had armed security guards, that never would have went down.
Well, not to that extent, anyway.
He might have got a couple shots off.
Getting to the point where it's going to have to be something like that.
Well, that's where we're going. I mean, there's no other remedy because there's just no way that you could take away all the guns. Number one, because you're penalizing a law-abiding citizen that did nothing. Number two, there's just too damn many of them. I mean, if you went about trying to get every little gun right down to a Saturday night special off the streets, good luck. Because the only ones that'll have them are the criminals at that point.
Well, I don't think anyone needs to do that or is even thinking about it. But what can be done, and even this would be extraordinarily impractical, of course, but what should be done, the step that needs to be taken is automatic and semi-automatic weapons. There is no excuse for citizens to have automatic and semi-automatic weapons.
They should not have. In my opinion, I do not own any assault rifles. Every firearm I currently own is for hunting purposes, completely legitimate purposes. I do not own.
Exactly.
I do not own these assault rifles because it's my own moral choice. I personally do not believe that they have a place in my home. I mean, why do I need one? But there are available. And they're out there, and there's so many of them out there now that it makes and that's where I draw the line as well. I'm right there with you. I think that there should be a line drawn in the sand here, for crying out loud. I mean, when are we going to kind of wake up and realize that, hey, a guy with a 30-round magazine with an AK-47, does he really use that for deer hunting? I mean,
see, that's exactly it. The problem. What has changed? Besides, we're just, unfortunately, and we've talked about this before, we're in an era where this has become commonplace.
Yes.
Someone got the idea. It was, Columbine, which was, over 10 years ago, I believe. That was shocking and novel. But ever since, copycat.
Oh, everywhere.
Just in the last year, I mean, there's been something like 40 of these. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
40 in schools. It's just, there's nothing new or novel about it anymore. It's a copycat. Now it's in people's minds.
Yeah.
So you have
are we kind of, Eric?
All these nihilists who hate mankind, who feel completely oppressed, have nowhere left to turn. Instead of just killing themselves, or God forbid, climbing up out of the basement and killing their mother, they go to a campus or a business or even a military installation with automatic weapons, and that's the difference. It's the volume of people in a extraordinarily short period of time. If you can only shoot one bullet at a time, one by one, and you have a maximum of 6 or whatever, then at least it's self-limiting. When you have multiple guns and multiple automatic or semi-automatic assault type weapons, then there's no limit essentially to how many people you can kill.
I think
it literally seems to be some sort of competition these days.
It does, and I think we're at the point where the answer is not less guns, it's more guns in the right hands, is where we're kind of pointing now as far as self-defense goes. Because, I mean, like we talked earlier, you just can't, there's just so many of them guns, and rightfully so, law-abiding citizens like myself and everyone else that legally owns these guns and responsible with them should not have to pay for these nut jobs. But man, it just breaks my heart. I mean, had just a couple people been armed, they could have taken him down, and it's been and the research has bore that out time and time again. It's more guns, not less guns.
I have a certain amount of mathematical and probabilistic sympathy for that argument, but I don't think it leads where we want. I think what you're talking about really, becomes simply an arms race.
Well, it becomes
I think
an armed
where
citizen.
you gotta look is the rest of the world, literally.
Well,
the entire rest of the world.
Exactly where I live, to get a conceal and carry permit, the only thing you have to do is go down to the police station and apply for one, and they give it to you. That's it. That's all you gotta do.
Yeah, I'm just, as we've also discussed, I have a fundamental, underlying, probably insurmountable prejudice against guns in general.
Sure.
I don't think that the nation's fixation with guns is healthy. I do not dispute, I do not argue with, I do not want to change the fundamental constitutional right to be armed. There are certainly scenarios, including, obviously, what we hear about all the time these days, doomsday scenarios, zombie apocalypse scenarios, or even, which is the least likely of all, foreign invasion.
Yes. Yeah.
Scenarios. There's no foreign power that's going to invade.
No,
the United States.
no. It's
not in the foreseeable future.
But
nonetheless, there is a right. There's a fundamental right, and even if it's just A, home protection, B, hunting, fine, no problem with it. I'm not going to do it, but I do not dispute or question or have anything against anyone else.
I guess what infuriates me, Eric, on the story is it's 10 innocent souls losing their lives. And there wasn't anyone anywhere near there that could have helped them in time to save them. There's a certain point where we have to take our own protection into consideration. Because quite honestly, we're our first line of defense. We're our own first line of defense.
With that, I really do. I'm at least theoretically fully a rugged individualist. I am actually in some ways sympathetic with many of the libertarian thoughts. Certainly nowhere near all, and there is a line that's crossed, and then you're crazy. But nonetheless, less government in the broadest sense is better than more government. I agree with that. More freedom is better than less freedom. I agree with that. However, the bottom line is, from a purely statistical standpoint, the more people who have guns, the more people who are apt to use them. And statistically, people in the home use guns more often to harm each other or themselves than intruders.
This is true. I mean, that's the thing. Now, anyone that's listening to the show, don't think you can have a loaded firearm next to your bed and you're going to be just fine, because quite honestly, more times than not, it's used against you rather than you have a chance to use it on them.
Or you're just drunk out of your mind for no particular reason. It's just one of those days, one of those things, and something just absolutely enrages you, and for no reason whatsoever, without the moment of thought, you may not even actually be conscious because you're so drunk, you shoot your wife.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a stretch. That is a stretch.
I'm saying someone picks that up and uses it.
But most people are very, very vetted to the point, of course, when you do apply for like a conceal and carry permit. You have to go through classes. You have to go through background checks. I mean, it's just not they hand you the certificate and say, go on your merry way. There is a vetting process to make sure that you are not a nut job.
Well, if that process is followed closely and religiously, and in fact, everyone is checked, then obviously that goes a long way to mitigating it. It's just, the cliches, we all know all the cliches. And I can throw the anti-gun cliches at you just as easily as you can throw them at me. And we're going to end up probably somewhere in the middle. I'm very glad to hear that you do not support assault weapons, automatic, semi-automatic. There's just no place.
Well, full disclosure to you and the listeners, I'm a life member of the NRA. And I'm a very big believer that guns are, they're tools. Okay? They're tools is what they are at the end of the day. And quite honestly, it's our responsibility as owners of these tools to know the limits and use them properly. Anyone that does this anyone that kills people like this, anyone that pulls this crap, they deserve to die, to be honest with you. It's not fair.
Sure they do.
It's
but
not.
The problem is they killed all these other people.
Exactly. They killed all these people. And what the worst is when the gunman decides to turn the gun on themselves and the family never gets their pound of justice. That's the worst to me.
That's the norm, you know? I mean, it's either that, you know, they take out as many as they can, then when they're cornered, when there's nothing left to do, there's no one left to kill, they turn it on themselves. Why didn't they just turn it on themselves in the first place? I'm sorry, if the end result is that person's death.
Well, it goes beyond guns, Eric.
It goes just do that in the first place.
It goes right to our culture. I mean, it's beyond the gun. The gun is just the tool used. I mean, he could have used a knife, for crying out loud. He could have used explosives. People are killing each other long before guns were ever invented. But it's the culture that we live in that glorifies. You know, the average child watches 80,000 acts of violence on television before the age of 18. Did you know that?
Yes. I mean, I didn't know
80,000. I was just reading this the other day because I was doing another radio show about this, and over 80,000 acts of violence are witnessed. You know how many? And we're so anti-American. I'm not trying to, you know, sway either way, but we're so anti-sex, right? That if you compare to sexual things that they see on TV versus violence, oh my God, the make love not war is way outweighed. I mean, they see way more violence, man killing man, than they do the female form. Let's just say.
Oh yeah,
I mean, then we wonder why we have a society. We have games like Call of Duty that puts you behind the sniper rifle, that are realistic these days. So realistic, it's like watching a movie. I think it goes a long way to saying that maybe we're reaching that pinnacle of where we are just desensitized to violence.
There's no question whatsoever. Let's go back to the whole 4chan thing. How could those people, even if they really didn't think that this person ultimately was going to cross the line, part of what goes on in these chat rooms like 4chan and well, I mean, any chat room, anywhere, it doesn't matter. There's nothing magical about that one. That one just seems to be a repository of the truly deranged. But, you know, people vent, people blow steam, you know, vent their spleens in these public, semi-public settings all the time. Yep. What percentage of them actually act upon it? Well, a tiny percentage. But all it takes is a tiny percentage.
Well, exactly. If you have some morons on this 4chan, which I hate even saying the name of this website to even give them any exposure.
Oh, they have plenty of exposure.
But if you have these kind of deranged individuals telling this young man of 20 years old, which is impressionable, let's just be honest, a 20-year-old is extremely impressionable at that age, telling him ways to kill more people while he's shooting, they should be held, like you said, as accessories to murder, and they should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's just appalling, and it speaks to exactly what you were saying about the desensitization.
We're so desensitized.
Yes, I mean, we are, and some more than others. And honestly, I do believe that the really realistic video games, you know, I'm so neutral. I'm so not crusading about video games. I don't play video games. I don't care about video games. It just doesn't enter really into my life. I can't imagine putting the time into it. I'm so busy anyway. The little bit of recreational time, about the last thing I would think of doing was playing a video game. But nonetheless,
do you watch movies though?
Similar to what you were saying about how much violence the children see by the time they're, you know, X years old, that they've seen on TV or in film, it's even more intense via the violent video games. And of course, all or essentially all of the most popular games are violent, one way or another.
Yes, they are. And even movies. I mean, I'm sure you like to watch a good shoot 'em up kind of flick once in a while. So right there, I mean, it all comes into being a bigger problem than just the gun itself. It's the things leading up to the gun.
I agree, and I agree with you also that the gun is a tool, and tools don't use themselves. But the one reply I do have to that, the caveat is, because they are so dangerous and because people are so flawed and there's such a huge range, a spectrum of people who can get their hands on guns who are qualified or not qualified. You have a huge range of people who are absolutely on top of it, know everything they're supposed to do, know how to handle it. They are sound of body and mind, to people like mass killers, like today, like Columbine, like Sandy Hook, and on and on and on and on, and on and on and on and on. And the problem is, my response is, it's the sheer volume of the guns.
I would agree. I would wholeheartedly agree with you.
Part of the problem.
And I was interviewing the president of the NRA one time on radio. And we had gotten to this, and we were heated, him and I, because he's a staunch believer in taking nothing away.
Of course.
But I'm more in the middle. I'm like, hey, man, it has its place. But he turned around and he says, you could still buy fertilizer, you could still buy diesel fuel, and you could still buy blasting caps, can't you? And I said, yes.
Well, it takes some time and effort to mix all that up.
Well, yes, but his point was that the Oklahoma bombing was not done with a gun.
No, it wasn't.
That was his point, and he had a valid point. I have to give the devil his due. I just want to leave it there.
9/11 wasn't done with a gun either.
But exactly. So I mean, there's got to be a happy medium in society where we take accountability for ourselves and stop this mass media of violence and focus on. I don't want to sound like a hippie here, but focus more on the love, man.
I agree. I agree. You know, the problem is, we get the media we deserve.
Exactly, but we got to run a break. That's what we got. That's what we deserve. We have to run a break, pay some bills. Be right back with your most haunted America's headlines. I can't even talk. I'm so frustrated with the guns.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If pop culture is to be believed, roughly 40% of all people are actually vampires, or dating one. Well, undead or not, you can always save on a clean, comfortable room at Motel 6, even if you sleep during the day because direct sunlight turns you into a pile of sparkly coffee grounds. Speaking of which, we have free coffee every morning. You day sleepers may want to go for the decaf. I'm Tom Bodette, and we'll leave the light on for you. Book online at motel6.com.
I don't suppose they told you anything in Denver about the tragedy we had up here during the winter of 1970? I heard a man named Charles Grady is the winter caretaker. From what I've been told, I mean, he seemed like a completely normal individual. But at some point during the winter, he must have suffered some kind of a complete mental breakdown. He ran amok and killed his family with an axe.
Well, you can rest assured, Mr. Ullman, that's not going to happen with me.
That's right.
Mom, do you really want to go and live in that hotel for the winter?
Sure I do. It'll be lots of fun.
The only thing that can get a bit trying up here during the winter is a tremendous sense of isolation.
Is there something bad here?
I fear you will have to deal with this matter in the harshest possible way.
I believe that I killed you with Danny.
You did this to me, didn't you?
I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains. Here's Johnny.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting.
Location.
My backyard.
Oh, your backyard. Try telling a bear that.
I did, and this bear talked back.
Talking bear, that's rich.
No, wait, it was Smokey Bear.
Smokey? Why didn't you say so?
I did say so.
Continue.
I was burning yard waste.
No, boy.
He told me to burn legally and responsibly, and to remember that if it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave.
And as always, he's right. 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. That means 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented.
Yeah, I know that now.
Thanks to me.
Actually, thanks to Smokey.
As usual, the talking bear gets all the credit. Get your Smokey on. Always burn responsibly and contact your local fire department for open burning regulations. Because 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at smokeybear.com. Only you can prevent wildfires.
Only in the forest can you see this. But nothing beats the moment you see that.
Cool!
That's your child's eyes opening up to a world of possibilities.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org. Learn about forests near you and discover cool things to do when you go. And you might just see this. Visit discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Do you have a question for our guest tonight? Don't feel like calling the show? Not a problem. Email those questions to afterhoursam@gmail.com. Again, that's afterhoursam@gmail.com. And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis, and along with me,
Eric Olson.
And we're coming right back at you. But, we're going to have something a little more, fun to talk about now. It's because it is the 1st of October, after all.
Ah, thank goodness.
America.
Yes, we have finally arrived in official Halloween.
Thank God.
Season. Yes, finally it is our official time of year. We who are America's Most Haunted, and After Hours AM for that matter.
Exactly.
It's Halloween time.
But I think what we should touch on is tonight's subject matter. Before we get into it, top of the next hour, just to give over the heads up, is going to be a little graphic. It might be a little hard to listen to. We are going to go really in depth on the Mark and Debby Constantinos incident. I just want to let everyone know that, heads up. Everything you may hear may not be pretty. And just kind of want to give that advisory to everyone that might be listening that doesn't like to hear about domestic violence and things going bad like that.
Yeah, it's very disturbing, and the more we're finding out about it, kind of the more disturbing it is. On the surface, man, I have now talked to a number of people, been kind of honing in on the locals there in Reno, where they have lived for a while, and no one knew anything about this. At least that is what they claim.
It's really a bad story. Bad tragedy. We're getting to the bottom of it with some people that knew them very, very well as some news organizations are going to weigh in as well. So that'll be happening at the top of the hour. But for now, let's get to America's Most Haunted Headlines.
Yes! So to follow along, which we encourage you always very strongly to do, is go on to Twitter. You don't even have to be a member. Just get on Twitter and look up at AM Haunted. That is the official America's Most Haunted Twitter account. You can also follow pretty closely along. It's not exactly one for one, but it's most of the same stories on the America's Most Haunted Facebook page. And you can look that up under America's Most Haunted, or just that is also, the address is also AM Haunted. So let us check that out. Today, because it was the first and because we were launching into the new season, there's kind of a lot of lighter stuff. We've talked a fair amount in the past about pareidolia. If you don't know what that is, it's also called matrixing. It's just the brain's tendency to find patterns where there are actually none. And this is something that has evolved and grown over time, and it's actually very helpful that we are able to spot these patterns because, of course, where they do exist, that's a very important thing, to be able to spot a tiger coming through, slinking through the forest, through the dappled forest, and for a child to be able to recognize faces and all that kind of stuff. Those all stem from the same place. But this also leads to seeing things
that aren't there.
that just aren't there. So if you are on our Facebook, go to the tweet that says "Fun with Pareidolia" and look at this picture. This is a photograph of I think a kind of a twilight type sky.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
And it's mostly cloudy, but
It
up in the
is.
right-hand corner, there is very clearly a face.
No, that's not a face.
Well,
That's
it's not
clouds.
really a face.
That's clouds mimicking a face.
It's exactly that.
But you kind of got to
It's
go a
my
long
eye
way.
seeing a pattern where there is none.
You got to get a long way though to get a face out of that. I'm just saying, for me anyway.
I see that whole upper right hand being the head.
Yeah, I guess now that you say, see there again, it's power of suggestion. Now that you say something, but yeah,
So
no,
you got that
I
whole
see it.
swirling motion in the upper right, and that's the whole the frontal view of the head and face. Then you come down, and you have a large forehead. Then you have two eyes. The eyes aren't as easy to see as the nose, which is very clear, and then the mouth, which looks kind of like a skeleton's mouth, comes down below the nose. That's what I see.
Yeah, I could see that now that you say something. Well, again, like I said, it's his power suggestion part of it.
It's a very large part of it.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, no doubt. All right, so we're rejoicing. It's October 1st.
Woohoo!
And finally, I'm so excited. You can put, it's been available for a while, but I've just finally figured it out because I'm kind of dumb, that you can do GIFs.
I see that. You have the GIF up there, that little zombie dancing, going, all right, it's Halloween.
He is rocking to the beat of October. And we mentioned last week, Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos in Spanish, is the fastest growing holiday in the world. And there's all kinds of announcements. Now that we've hit the 1st of October, all the announcements are coming out about the celebrations. It actually takes place a couple days after Halloween, but it's so similar. But just for example, they're just going crazy out in the Palm Springs desert area out in California. There's all kinds of different activities. Of course, that is a heavily Mexican-American area, and that's where the Day of the Dead springs forth. It is not directly related to Halloween. It's actually kind of just coincidental that it comes at the same time of year, and because of that, it's just kind of getting folded in to the whole Halloween mentality and the Halloween celebrations. I know lots of people who do their Halloween thing, and then a day or two later, whenever their local Day of the Dead celebration is, they just completely switch over. They put up the little altar. They do the decorating. They do the sugar skulls. They go all out. They do them both.
You know what's cool this year, though, about Halloween is it falls on a Saturday, my friend.
It is
Saturday.
Absolutely the coolest. And our band, The Props, is playing on Halloween.
Are you going to do some Alice Cooper? Come on, like Welcome in My Nightmare and stuff?
Well, you know we're doing Don't Fear the Reaper, obviously.
Yes, that's a must. How about Monster Mash? You get to throw that on there?
Yeah, we did do the Monster Mash a couple years ago. We played a Halloween party. It wasn't actually on Halloween, but we did do the Monster Mash. It's actually really easy. So, yes, we will resurrect the Monster Mash, and we'll see what else. We're going to go full out. This is going to be decoration, in costume. Any of you who are in the Cleveland area will be playing at the Greenville Inn, Cleveland's greatest dive bar in Chagrin Falls, Ohio, and we are The Props. Join us, rock it out. It will be madness.
Yes, make sure you catch the Props. Halloween night at the Chagrin.
It'll be amazing.
It'll be amazing. You'll pay for the whole seat, but you only need the edge.
Right. All right, so being that it's October, now all the haunted attractions are hitting full swing. A lot of them open before October now. I'd say maybe a third to a quarter open before October. But really, once you hit October, in other words, this weekend, is when they really start to kick in.
Yeah, it's going to shift gears. Yep.
It's fun. I love the haunted houses, the haunted attractions. There is such thing as too much as far as I'm concerned. There is a border that should not be crossed. I'm not into these ones. Some of these cutting-edge, extreme ones now where it's dark and they can touch you.
Yeah, no thanks, I'm good.
Hours and all kinds of actual physical deprivation. I am not in favor of that.
No.
It's more standard, traditional, spooky, scary, haunted house. Rock it out. So we just, for example, there's a nice little guide in, and again, this is at our AM Haunted Twitter account, just today. Check it out, the tweet. There's a reference to a guide to all of the greater New York City. So you can imagine that is a huge area. That is a lot of attractions. Was put up by the New York Daily News. So go check it out. Right here in Ohio, one of my favorites, our good buds over in Sandusky, which is where Cedar Point is. They run the Lake Erie Fear Fest, which is combined with Ghostly Manor, and that's a great one. It's literally within a mile,
Exactly.
I think, or so, not much more.
And if you're in the
Cedar Point,
and if you're in the Virginia, Minnesota area where I'm at, I will be attending the Field of Screams, our very own haunted attraction over at the Minnesota Discovery Center. So pop in, say hi. I'll be there.
very nice. See, you're like a celebrity, man.
Well, you know, yeah. I make my rounds.
How cool is that? All right, we've been talking every week about Fear the Walking Dead. We're coming up now.
I haven't watched it, man. Didn't watch it.
You didn't see it this week?
I missed it, man. I got some stuff going on, and I just totally missed it. I don't know if I'm going to make it this week for the finale. I didn't even DVR'd or anything, so shame on me. So I can only listen to what people are saying. They're saying it's actually really building up really nicely.
Yeah, they emphasized the importance of the personality of our friend from Central America, and we learn in a role reversal. He's been talking all along about all these things that happen and why he's paranoid, basically, and why he felt he was prepared, and he was the one, he tortured this poor guy to get the information out of him about what's going on, what the National Guard is doing. Well, as he admitted to his daughter and to us, the millions of viewers, at the very end of that episode, it was actually role reversal. He was the torturer all along.
Really?
He wasn't a victim.
Interesting. I like it. I like how they flipped it around on us.
Completely flipped around. He was the perpetrator. Now, he still claims he didn't really have any choice, but nonetheless.
Yeah, well, whatever. Yeah, I hear ya.
Is right.
Yeah. We all know the truth.
So we're going to see in the finale, what do they choose to do? The National Guard is pulling out. They're just flat out up and leaving, and they are not defending those who were brought in, the various damaged souls and people, medical problems who were brought in, who were hauled in, including Nick, the son, the junkie, the heroin addict. Yeah. And so, the implication is they're going to all be killed, all these people.
Yeah, well, I mean, could you imagine, though, being in that universe and being like a diabetic or something? You'd be so screwed. I mean,
any chronic.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
Requiring ongoing medication.
Well, I was listening to a radio show the other day, and I kind of weighing in on it. If the grid, the electronic grid, fell apart tomorrow due to EMP blast, natural disaster, solar flare, whatever, do you realize that we would not survive very long?
Well, most of us, certainly many of us, would not. Yeah, I think about that pretty often. It occurs to me that one of the things they really don't address very much on The Walking Dead is, medical needs. All these people who have survived are basically healthy. They have to be.
Yes.
You cannot have a chronic condition and have lived now through a few years of this.
Yeah, well, exactly. We were just talking about that the other day. I mean, because we had a fairly substantial blackout in my area, well, it must have been 4 or 5 years ago. My God, society broke down. It really did. I mean, just in my small little town, people, even right down to the stoplights not working. Just chaos. Mass hysteria, dogs and cats living together, the whole bit.
It is very disturbing. And, that really is, I think, the underlying appeal of all these post-apocalyptic shows, because this is something that really concerns us. We ignore it, or at least until recently, because there's been so much talk lately because of all these shows. And it's not just shows, it's movies, it's books, it's comics, it's everything. But there's been an awful lot of focus on the post-apocalyptic world of one kind or another over the last...
Do they know something that we do not? That's my question.
Well, I think popular culture is simply tapping into this underlying vein, this fear, this collective fear that we have. Because I think deep down we all know how absolutely saran wrap thin is the veneer of civilization.
Society is fragile. It doesn't take much to upset it.
Very fragile.
You know,
I think
way
the
fragile.
human spirit and the human, ultimately the human body is extremely resilient. I think mankind as a group is very resilient, but civilization is not.
You know who's going to be, really, if the grid did go down tomorrow, the ones that'll make it would be the rednecks. I mean, let's just be honest.
The doomsday preppers?
I mean, the guys that, that hunt and do all that kind of stuff and know how to live off the land, they'd be just fine. It's the rest of us that live in town and
that's
big
exactly
cities.
Why these survival shows are so popular as well.
Exactly. I was watching one called, Apocalypse 101 on the old Netflix. My God, they prepare for everything, these preppers. It's unreal what they prepare for. And then you also realize they're not very prepared at all when they forget water, okay?
Yeah.
You want water.
You gotta have some water. And if you're going to try to survive in anything approaching modern life, you got to have a generator.
Yes, you do.
You got to have something to put in that generator.
Yes, sir, you do. So, I mean, I think that anyone, no matter how well you prepare for the end, so to speak, you can't do it until you're there because you don't know really what's going to happen. So
you don't know what the exact conditions are. But you know what's interesting? Quite recently, just in the last few years, the government has finally gotten smart, and they're playing into the whole zombie apocalypse thing, and they're pretending as if it were a real possibility.
Yes, they are. The CDC actually had a thing on the internet for a long time, how to prepare for a zombie apocalypse. So really what they're doing is getting you prepared for major storms, stuff like that. But
any kind of disaster.
They're trying to make it cool, is what they're trying to do.
Exactly.
Kudos to them. Kudos to them.
What this week has also been really big on is space. My goodness. The announcement about Mars.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, people went nuts.
Well,
I mean, there was nothing really all that new if you've been paying attention.
No.
But they did confirm what has been suspected, that there is actual liquid water periodically on a regular basis on Mars.
Yes.
And that is very, very significant. And you combine that this week with the super blood harvest moon.
Did you see that bad boy?
I did. It was not that impressive.
No, I was like, that's
a lot
it?
Of cloud cover, and it just wasn't that big.
No, I was expecting something bigger.
Yeah. A lot of really amazing pictures, though.
Yes.
Those guys, they got the filters. They got the lenses.
Yeah. But,
got the zooms.
I'll say what my wife said on my wedding night. I thought it was going to be bigger.
Referring to your bank account.
That's right. That's right.
Needless to say. Yeah, mine too. That's what she said. But there's new pictures. They've done topographical pictures now of Ceres, which is one of the amazing dwarf planets that they're, considering. That's the one with the big crater that has the white reflective spots in it.
Yep.
And it's probably ice, but a lot of people think it's cocaine.
Yeah, well, that's because they want to go somewhere happy.
Yeah, so now there's a picture out that is topographical and it's colored. So it's like a cotton candy dwarf planet.
I see
it's
that.
An amazing picture.
That is really a cool picture.
It is.
I mean, they definitely worked hard on that picture.
And there's lots of other pictures. Supernova explosion 8,000 years ago, which in astronomical time is the blink of an eye, formed this amazing Veil Nebula. Go check out that picture. That is unbelievably beautiful, and it's covering
that really is
astonishingly large portion of space. It's really, it's kind of amazing.
In fact, I'm going to retweet that. I like that.
You should go for it.
I'm retweeting that, but I just like the picture, quite honestly, and
it's an amazing picture.
It is amazing. I mean, I really I really am a space junkie because I really believe that somewhere in this vast universe there has to be life. I mean, whether it's intelligent or not, I don't know.
I do too.
But-
I'm starting to think it is not unlikely that there is some kind of life, probably only microbial, but nonetheless.
But it
life
could be humans.
nonetheless,
If we're here, why can't they be there? I mean,
in our
you know.
solar system.
Yes, in our solar
Right
system.
here.
Yes,
Maybe Mars.
I would agree.
Maybe Ceres.
I would wholeheartedly agree with you.
Maybe Enceladus.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I would have to say, though, in a galaxy far, far away, I think there could be life. I really do.
Sure.
I think there could be other, I don't know if they're humanoids or what they are, but I would imagine. I mean, why would we have this vast universe if there's nothing inhabiting it?
I agree. I mean, I'm not sure that is the cause and effect, but it's just statistics.
Yes.
It's so huge.
Oh, yeah.
And everything they keep finding, day after day, week after week, month after month, this is going on right now. All these exoplanets that they keep finding that are in the so-called Goldilocks zone, that are approximately the right size, approximately the right temperature, appear to be rocky. There's no reason at all.
But no Planet X yet.
No
Planet X. I've been waiting for them to announce we did find Planet X. I'm starting to doubt the existence, to be honest with you, of the Planet X that I've heard so much about, especially on Ancient Aliens.
Right.
I just don't know if it's there. We would have seen it by now. You would think that we would have seen it by now.
You would certainly think. I mean, I'm sure there are still surprises out there. There's no doubt about that. We haven't seen it all. But you're talking about something that's right in our backyard.
Yes, and I know I'm going to make people angry here, some people angry, but I don't buy the whole ancient alien thing personally. I like to give ourselves a little more credit than just one of those things. I think we have more
that it was
ingenuity.
gifted to us. I agree.
Exactly.
It's really kind of patronizing, isn't it?
It really is. You know, we got 5 minutes to the top of the hour, but I just want to say this quick before you move on, that I think that we're more gifted and more smarter of a species. I think that we did all this on our own. I don't believe that we had ETs coming down to help us. I'm just saying that. I want to give us more credit.
I do too. I am certainly, well, let me put it this way. I am certainly not convinced that, we have been visited and or aided. I think it's much more unlikely than it is likely. And like you say, I give evolution and the human race a lot more credit than a lot of people seem to, because look at all the things that we're able to do. Just because you go back in time, you got to go a long way back. I mean, we were smart 1 million years ago.
Yes, we were.
We were really smart 100,000
Oh,
years.
absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And I just don't buy the whole ancient alien thing. I was pressed on that today. Do you believe in the ancient aliens? No, I'm sorry. There just is not enough evidence there for me to sit there and say, yes, they did come down and they did make the pyramids and they did give us the microwave and look at everything that we have because of them. I jokingly say it's alien technology, but seriously, my heart of heart says no, it's not.
Exactly. I agree. We're on the same page on that. Last little quick bit here. A lot of people, a lot of reviewers are saying this is the best horror, and I'm interpreting that broadly, scary movies season in decades this year. Movies coming out, few are already out, like Hotel Transylvania 2, for example. But Crimson Peak is coming out. You got the Goosebumps movie coming out. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of movies, horror movies, scary movies, Halloween-themed movies coming out in this season. This is a golden age for Halloween-themed or horror-themed or scary-themed films coming out. And, man, you could go pretty much every day all month and see a new film and not cover them all.
Yeah, well, yes. And that's good, though, because we've been needing that for a while. Because I'm a horror movie junkie, man. I love a good horror flick.
What I'm really looking forward to is Crimson Peak.
Yes.
Because it's a combination of big budget, so you got all the looks, and it's an old-fashioned gothic haunted house movie. It's got a great cast, and it's got Guillermo del Toro behind it. and it's getting advanced raves.
Sure. No, I would agree.
It's his best movie ever.
I'm also looking forward to that, and I think it's to be great. I really believe that he puts out some great movies, and this will be no exception.
I'm looking forward to it. Love a great haunted house movie. That's probably the ultimate as far as my horror wheelhouse. Those are the ones that get me the most, and I get the most wrapped up in. They seem the most plausible to me, and they're the most fun. I love a haunted house movie.
I do too. But man, we got to play your Fox News. When we come back, we're gonna dig into the whole, Mark and Debby Constantinos story, and we're going to really get to the meat of the matter on this, because I know a lot of people are talking about, a lot of people are buzz about it. Here at After Hours AM, we're going to get right into it, and we're going to get the truth, and we're going to talk to a lot of people, and we're going to really discuss, again, if you're squeamish at all when it comes to the subject matter of domestic violence, this may not be the show for you. I just want to put that out there and be responsible. But that being said, hang around, enjoy Fox News. We'll be right back right after this.
Live from New York, the Fox Report.
I'm Lisa Brady. And this is a Fox News alert. No one expected this in Roseburg, Oregon.
We called the cops and we called our families and we prayed that we weren't going to be next.
A deadly shooting rampage at a community college. Fox News Radio's Jessica Rosenthal following this live.
Lisa, Oregon's Attorney General has said 13 people were killed and many more were injured, but the Douglas County Sheriff, John Hanlon, would not confirm an exact number of those killed or injured.
Upon arriving there, they located the shooter in one of the buildings. Officers engaged that suspect. There was an exchange of gunfire. The shooter threat was neutralized.
Oregon's governor says she has learned the shooter was killed and was a 20-year-old man, Lisa.
Thanks, Jessica. Forecasters not sure yet if Hurricane Joaquin will hit the U.S., but it's now a Cat 4. Top sustained winds 130 miles per hour.
We're not taking any chances. That's why we're telling the public this is the time to make sure you have a plan and you're ready.
FEMA Chief Craig Fugate, for now it's battering the Bahamas. States of emergency already declared in at least 4 states, including New Jersey. Governor Chris Christie trying to reassure areas hit by Sandy.
I understand that there will be people who, when they start to hear this news, will feel an enormous amount of stress over the possibility that something severe could happen to the state again.
His presidential campaign events on hold for now. Virginia and the Carolinas already dealing with severe flooding from other storms.
Our message to everybody in the Commonwealth is be prepared.
Governor Terry McAuliffe says Virginia could get up to 10 inches of rain beginning today, on top of the 4 inches they had Tuesday. A weak start to the new fiscal year on Wall Street. The Dow down 13 points, the S&P up 4, the NASDAQ up 7. On the Fox Report, fair and balanced. The Oregon governor moments ago.
I know I am joined by my fellow Oregonians and Americans in profound dismay and heartbreak at this tragedy at Umpqua Community College.
This after the deadly shooting that left multiple deaths and injuries. The governor not confirming what the state attorney general has said, at least 13 dead. Police still conducting a methodical search of the campus. The gunman killed in a shootout with police was 20 years old and appeared to target one classroom. It's been a long time coming for the family of slain Border Patrol agent Brian Terry. 2 of the suspects found guilty of murder today in federal court in Arizona. It was Terry's killing that exposed the botched federal program known as Fast and Furious that sold guns to criminals with the intent of tracking the weapons. The U.S. and Russian militaries holding talks on how to stay out of each other's way during airstrikes in Syria. But White House spokesman Josh Earnest says this doesn't change the previous decision to limit military cooperation with Russia because of their aggression in Ukraine.
That policy has not changed, and these conversations will not rise to that kind of broader strategic level.
Russia insisting for a second day it's only targeting the same groups as the U.S.-led coalition. Vowing that Israel will protect itself, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is warning the UN General Assembly again that the nuclear deal with Iran will not prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon or stop it from sponsoring terrorism.
Does anyone seriously believe that flooding a radical theocracy with weapons and cash will curb its appetite for aggression?
Netanyahu at one point including an angry, prolonged silence in his speech to emphasize what he says has been the deafening silence from the UN. In New York, I'm Lisa Brady on Fox News Radio.
Do you have a question for our guest tonight? Don't feel like calling the show? Not a problem. Email those questions to afterhoursam@gmail.com. Again, that's afterhoursam@gmail.com.
This is the latest disclosure in a report from National Civil Defense Headquarters in Washington. It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder. A widespread investigation of reports from funeral homes, morgues, and hospitals has concluded that the unburied dead are coming back to life and seeking human victims.
And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me is Mr. Eric Olson. Eric, I realize that we're going to be covering a topic and subject matter tonight that is a bit of a touchy one, and it's a really hard one to report on and talk about. But that being said, I got some audio from our good friends over at NBC News. And before we even open up this can, I would like to just play this. And so we all have a full scope of the story, some of the story, at least the nuts and bolts of what's going on.
Let's go. Want to go here? Yeah.
On screen, Mark and Debby Constantinos were a team, husband and wife with a shared passion, communicating with ghosts through EVP, electronic voice phenomena. But off-screen, a different story emerged. One that ended in homicide. Mark held Debby hostage at the Courtside Garden Apartments in Sparks. According to police, both were dead when SWAT teams finally entered. It's a story that Sue Meiske has seen before. She's the director of the Nevada Network Against Domestic Violence.
When these kinds of stories come up, the number of calls to our hotline goes up as people understand that that could have been them.
In Nevada last year, over 40,000 people called help hotlines. 18 people died in homicides related to domestic violence statewide. And just last week, the Violence Policy Center ranked Nevada 5th for the highest per capita rate of men killing women.
It isn't always easy to reach out, and it isn't always easy to accept the help. These are very complicated situations.
Court records illustrate a history of domestic violence with the Constantinos. 6 weeks before their death, Mark and their daughter were accused of kidnapping and strangling Debby. Both were ordered to stay away. In March 2014, Debby was also arrested for domestic battery with a deadly weapon. They filed for divorce September 10th. Meiske says victims are most at risk when they leave a violent relationship, and they should have a safety plan.
To think about what could happen if you left, what kind of threats have there been already, what kind of means does the person have to carry out those threats, and what steps can you take to make yourself as safe as possible?
All right, Eric, we heard the news report, and now who do we have with us, Eric, on the line?
We have ace reporter, and I do mean that in every meaning of the word, a real old-school reporter, Ed Pierce from TV station KOLO in Reno. Welcome to the show, Ed.
Well, thanks for asking me.
No, our pleasure all the way, Ed. It's a real pleasure having you on the show. And as the story was unfolding, I mean, when you reported on it, and I know you kind of dug into it, what was the things that really stuck out to you?
Well, it first started for us with just a report of a body in a home in northwest Reno, and my photographer and I went to that location. Photographer from our morning show was already there. The thing I was struck by was that very little was happening there. The body was still in the home. There was an excuse for that. It's a rental, and the owner was out of state, and so they were having that problem getting a warrant to go in and fully process the crime scene. but there was only one detective there who was guarding a potential piece of physical evidence that was lying in the street. It was a cigarette butt. So not a lot going on, but all of a sudden we hear about things happening across town in Sparks. And if you're not familiar with Reno, we have a sister city right next to us, Sparks, and they're really just one community inside this valley. And so my coworker Terry Russell and her photographer were already being dispatched to that scene, and we very quickly were getting the idea from police sources that we were talking to that what was happening in Sparks was the second half of what we were sent to cover in Northwest Reno. And so we went over there, and I was on one side of an apartment complex. Terry was on the other, and we waited out the long standoff for a few hours before we heard the flashbangs go on, and eventually we knew that it had come to a close with the deaths of both Mark Constantino and Deborah Constantino. But that's how it unfolded for me. I did not know anything about the Constantinos when I was initially responding to this. But very early, there were indications that the police were very familiar with this address, very familiar with the people involved, and that turned out to be true. The body inside was of a roommate. Debby Constantino was staying with another man and another woman in a home, and the man was dead inside there. We didn't know anything about the Constantinos, but once I heard the name and started relating it to police, they said, yes, we're very familiar. We know who's involved here. As it turned out, they had responded. They saw the body there. They very early learned that there was somebody missing from that home. That was Debby Constantino, and they were very anxious to locate her because of a recent history with she and her husband, and they were searching for her. And what had happened is that they pinged her cell phone. That led them to Sparks. They pinged his cell phone. That narrowed the search to this apartment complex in Sparks. Turned out that their daughter Raquel had an apartment there, and so they knocked on the door, didn't get an answer, went in, and heard gunshots and a male voice telling them to get out. They left, and the standoff started.
And that was about 3 hours?
Yeah, I would say about 3 hours in total, maybe a little bit longer. And there were negotiations going on. They kept, I'm told that they were saying, the usual thing you'd expect. Let's not get anybody else hurt. Let's end this peacefully, that kind of thing. Yeah. He was talking with them for some time. They kept asking him to, they said, well, you got a cell phone there. Take a picture of her. We want to make sure she's okay. And he kept putting them off. Give me 10 minutes more, whatever. Yep. And finally, there were other shots heard, and that's when they went in with the flashbangs and found them both dead. It's still under investigation, to my knowledge, and the police have not said at this point at what point they believe that he killed her, whether it was the first shots when they first went in, when they first arrived at the location, or whether it were the shots that were heard at the end of the standoff.
No, sir. It's been reported that Mark Constantino, I don't know if you heard this or even heard of anyone saying this, said, give me 15 minutes to clear my head or I'll kill her. That has been...
He might have said that. I can't say that was a quote. They haven't released anything like that. I do know that he kept putting them off, kept asking for more time when they were asking for proof that she was okay.
Okay. Wow.
Could you hear any of this yourself as this was going on?
No, it's a fairly, it's not a huge complex, but it's big enough, and we were being kept on the perimeter.
Sure.
We couldn't hear any of this. We could see activity. We were being, every time we tried to get a camera angle to shoot a little bit further in, we'd get waved off by police inside the perimeter, basically saying you stand there, you might get shot, that kind of thing. So we couldn't hear any of that. We basically were standing on the outside until we heard the flashbangs, and then we knew that it was coming to some kind of conclusion.
And the thing of it is Debby Constantino, this is out there for public consumption, this isn't made up, was facing her own charges of domestic violence against Mark.
That was alleged. If you look in the records that we looked, we looked back and the trail that we found starts in 2012, and Mark Constantino files a temporary restraining order against her, saying she drinks a lot and she's getting violent. He claims that he was afraid of her. I've heard some people question how. I mean, I never met Debby Constantino, but by all accounts, she was a very small person. Why he would be afraid of her, but there's that alleged, and there is the allegations about her carrying a knife. Now, whether that was whatever happened to that confrontation, whether that was defensive in her case, I don't know. Sure. I do know that when it came when she filed for a temporary restraining order and divorce in August, after the incident that involved the charges of kidnapping against Mark and their daughter, that she alleged that he had been beating her for a number of years. He'd been abusive for a number of years. When he withdrew that temporary restraining order, by the way, that he filed in 2012. He later withdrew it, saying that he had been he'd thought about it, and he said that he'd been undergoing some kind of chemotherapy and maybe hadn't been thinking right, and so he withdrew it. Clearly, the troubles between the two of them didn't go away. So.
No, and by all accounts now, just from people that knew them, that were close to them, again, everybody that's just tuning in, Mark and Debby Constantino tragically lost their lives in a murder-suicide, and they're best known for their portrayals, or their appearances, rather, on Ghost Adventures and other shows, but mainly the show Ghost Adventures, which is on the Travel Channel. But sources close to them that knew them that I spoke to, and of course this is hearsay, so I can't say for sure this is how it went down. But they were both very kind of violent towards each other, but mainly Mr. Constantino was the aggressor. They both allegedly stress that, drank quite a bit. That's all what I've heard from the peripheral people that knew them. Again, allegedly, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say, yes, this is what happened. But it does seem that there was quite a long track record of these problems. You're absolutely correct. The police must have known them very well. And it's just, I guess, Ed, it's just getting worse and worse as time goes on. You see more and more of these stories.
Well, it's a sad story, and in one respect, because of the Constantinos and who they were and their prominence in the world of paranormal investigation. I guess that this is getting all this attention, but in fact, this stuff goes on all the time. It doesn't always end in murder. It doesn't always end as violently as this, but it's a terrible chronic problem. And there isn't enough help out there. I mean, Debby Constantino very late turned to a local organization, Committee to Aid Abused Women. Mm-hmm. And this was after the August incident. And she looked for help. Some of the kinds of things that might be done with other women seeking the same help really weren't practical for her. In other words, was it practical for her to go to a shelter? Well, maybe for a short amount of time. Was it practical for her to relocate to another state? Given her lifestyle and her prominence in the paranormal world, mm-hmm. I'm not sure that she could have done that without completely going underground and walking away from everything else that she did.
Exactly, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but at this point, I want to give everyone the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And if anyone is dealing with this, any of our listeners are dealing with something similar, abuse in your own home, please call 1-800-799-7233. Again, 1-800-799-7233. That's the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So please call them; they will help you.
Well, and I got to echo that, and every community that's probably listening in, wherever your listeners are, has organizations like the Committee to Aid Abused Women, and there is help available out there. Now, the counselor who worked with Debbie told me that she was doing everything right. She needed to get out of the home. She had moved out of the home. She had filed for divorce. She had called police. She had filed for a restraining order. She needed to do that because of what happened in August, and we haven't really gone into that, but we can. Mm-hmm. But she was doing everything, but that's the point at which their lives are most in danger, because the abuser has lost all control at that point, and they really want them back, and they will use all kinds of means to do that. In her case, there's nothing unusual about this either. But in their case, he apparently was using their pets, holding them up as holding them as hostage in a way, and that's what really led to the incident on August the 7th. On the 5th, she had moved out. She was sleeping on the couch at these friends' house, and she got a call. This is all down in court document. This is her version, of course, but it's also the version that the complaint was based on against Mark and their daughter. She got a call that the dogs were out. Turned out that wasn't true, but you got to come over because the dogs are out. Yeah. She goes over there with a friend, and the daughter and Mark both attack she and the friend. In Debbie's case, he choked her until she lost consciousness, which he had done before, she alleged, and beat her, dragged her out of the car. Same thing happened with her friend, who was another woman. Raquel, the daughter, beat on the other woman. It's alleged, Debbie alleged in her complaint that her daughter actually bit her around the eye to the point where she needed some medical care.
Wow!
So it was a very violent, incident, and that's all. And that's happening maybe 6-7 weeks before everything came to a head. So. So you can see that the relationship has really gotten it's more than off the rails. But it's just gotten very violent at that point.
Why didn't the only thing I could think of it is this individual? Now, me and my co-host Eric, we both interviewed separately Constantinos at one time or another, and it was a tough interview. They had some jabs towards each other. Wouldn't that be putting it mildly, Eric?
Yeah.
There was definitely some contentious moments.
Mine was more recent. Mine was from 2013. So it's after that sequence of events that you traced that started in 12. And there was a lot going on. Go ahead. I wanted to refer to something that came up in that interview, but go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, but what strikes me is, and for everyone that's just tuning in, and I want to back up here, we're talking to Ed Pierce of KOLO of Reno, Nevada. He's ace reporter over there. So everyone that is in the area, make sure you tune into Ed. But Ed has been kind enough to come to After Hours AM and talk with us about this. But getting back to what I was saying is even interviewing them, as an interviewer, we really pick up on people's emotions because, we do it so much, right over the phone, right over the airwaves. We can pick right up on it. There was always this uneasy tension, and for me anyway. I can only speak for my interview with them, and this is what I felt. I could be wrong. I can't say this is what for sure was going on, but interviewing them, it was a 2-hour show, I do believe, at that time, and it was a very uneasy interview. And when I hung up with them, I thought to myself, wow, either they are playing a role and they want to be the feisty couple, and I hope that's what it is, or they have some real problems in the background that no one knows about.
Well, again, I never met the Constantinos, so what I know about them before this incident, I've gleaned from talking with people in the paranormal investigative world and going online and checking out shows like yours and backgrounding myself on them. I've been told that that as on the job, that is in an investigation, that they worked as a team, and and they worked well off each other. That if someone was down, if one of them was down, the other one was kind of picking up. But I'm also been told that they were very private about their private life, and didn't share it with a great many people. And so I know that although there were apparently reports of problems and drinking and what have you, that this outcome just really shocked people in your world.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I gathered from it as well, because, I mean, we do this radio show, and we kind of go everywhere, where we talk about all things, but as far as the paranormal community, it's a very tight-knit community when it comes down to it, and when something like this does happen in that community, man, it ripples like wildfire. I mean, it doesn't take long to get around at all.
I will tell you two things that I did immediately when I was getting an inkling of who the Constantinos were, and I called a person that I've known for a year or so, that founded and kind of heads up a local paranormal investigative group here in our area, and she said, she told me basically, that the way she described them, I said, you're telling me that they were kind of rock stars in the paranormal world. She said, that's a good phrase. She said, when anybody goes into the paranormal world, you get asked, especially in her case from Reno, do you know the Constantinos? Have you ever worked with them? I mean,
sure.
I guess their name is writ large out there in those corners. But she told me that when she heard they were having problems, heard they'd split, she actually called Debbie, and it was a sympathetic call. I know what you're going through, know, and basically, are you okay? And it was that kind of call.
Yeah.
She said also the night before all of this happened, I think this was, I believe I'm reporting this correctly, that this was happening on Facebook, that Mark was sitting watching football, Monday Night Football, alone, and had posted something, and she reached out to him, this friend of mine, and said, hey, how you doing? And he said, oh, I'm okay. And she said, well, if you ever need to, if you ever feel like you're alone, you're not, let us know. We can hang out. We can do something, whatever. And his response was, hey, I'm doing fine. I'm feeling a lot better than I have in some time. And we know that just hours after that, he went to her house and killed her roommate and kidnapped her and ended up killing both of them. So,
no, do you believe?
I don't know how you explain that. But.
No, do you believe? I mean, I don't mean to put you out like this, but do you believe this is definitely a premeditated situation rather than just an act of passion?
I don't know. I mean, there's obviously, the record says there's plenty of passion and negative passion in their relationship, and that it had reached has gone beyond the breaking point. I mean, that August incident is if you read the account of that, it's ugly enough. If you read it, you would be immediately concerned for her safety. So I don't know, and I don't know that we'll ever know. I mean, do you sit there one night watching football and posting, chatting with people on Facebook, and a few hours later go off and do that? I have no idea.
Now, Raquel Constantino, the daughter, the 23 years old, she's facing charges as we speak, is she not?
She is still facing charges. Charges were filed against her for domestic battery, kidnapping, against her mother and against her mother's friend, and her actions, or alleged actions, were almost as violent as his. I mean, Debbie alleged that her daughter bit her on her face. And to beat up her friend.
We have any idea?
And that's a puzzling. That to me initially was the most puzzling thing about all of this. And I asked the counselor at the Committee to Aid Abused Women who'd been working with Debbie, I said, "Can you have you seen that before?" And she said, "I've been doing this for years and years." And she said, "I got to say, I've never seen that." She said, I can't explain that family dynamic, and that to me remains unexplained."
Has anyone talked to her or the other daughter?
Nobody beyond police that I know of. She hasn't been available to us, and she is facing charges in November. It will be the first court appearances on the kidnapping and violence charges.
That will be interesting.
Assault charges.
How things.
One
work.
of the rumors that I had heard, kind of in defense of their side, quote unquote, I guess the Mark Raquel side versus the Debbie side, was that event, the August event, stemmed from the two of them, Mark and Raquel, trying to prevent Debbie from driving drunk, and that the strangling, quote unquote, was really doing everything they could to literally pull her out of the car,
Trying to justify their actions.
so that they.
Well, and I don't, I don't know where that rumor's coming from or whatever. All I can say is the account in the files on the case. If you're trying to prevent somebody from driving drunk, do you call them up and say, "Hey, your dogs are missing. Come on over"?
No.
Get in your car and come on over.
Exactly.
That's what they did.
Yes.
So I don't know, but I just have to point that out.
Well,
that is a contradictory piece of evidence, isn't it?
Well, it is, and quite honestly, it seems a lot like baiting to me to get her over there, and that's just. That statement about driving drunk makes no sense if you're baiting her to come over.
That's what's alleged, and Debbie herself in her filing for a restraining order said that she turned to her friend and said, "I know this is a setup, but I've got to go."
No, boy.
And so she went over there.
Oh, boy.
I don't know. None of us know all of the details of this, but if you remove it from who they were and why so many people are interested in the details and why rumors are flying and what have you, it is at its core a fairly depressingly familiar tale of domestic abuse escalating to the ultimate end of murder,
and it happens all too often, and just because it's getting the spotlight is there because of who they were, but in reality, this happens entirely too often in this country. We got to run a break, everyone. When we come back, we're going to talk a little more about Mark and Debby Constantino with Ed and boy, Ed Pierce, what a guy. What a really, really top-notch, very top-notch reporter. Again, thank you so much for coming on, but don't go anywhere, anyone. We're going to talk more about it. We're going to come back right after this.
Taking a family of 5 to the amusement park can cost a small fortune.
Oh, yeah. So to save some money, we thought, hey, let's bring the amusement park to us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right, step right up, young man. Are you ready to ride the Wacky Waterfall?
That's just the bathtub with the shower head running.
Nope, it's the Wacky Waterfall.
It's the shower, Dad.
Waterfall.
Wacky.
There's an easier way to save. To get a free rate quote, go to Geico.com. Then buy online, over the phone, or at your local Geico office.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes 2. There's pool. And there's the photo booth.
All right, everybody squeeze in. Say cheese!
Followed naturally by an order of wings. And another.
Can we get some extra ranch sauce?
Then there's the ceremonial nightcap.
So what are we doing this weekend?
And lastly, it's back to the car, which, if you're buzzed... could be the most expensive night of your life. Getting pulled over for buzzed driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzzed driving, because buzzed driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
What would you do if you accidentally discovered the house next door was occupied by something not human? Something horrifying. Something unspeakably evil. No one believes you.
Mom, I didn't have a nightmare.
Not your mom.
They did kill a girl over there.
Not your girlfriend.
Charlie, is this some sort of a trick to get me back?
Not even the police.
Look, I know it's crazy. I know that, but look, Lieutenant!
It knows that you know. You'll do anything to protect yourself, but it will do anything to protect its secret. Fright Night. If you love being scared, this could be the night of your life.
Do you have a question for our guest tonight? Don't feel like calling the show? Not a problem. Email those questions to afterhoursam@gmail.com. Again, that's afterhoursam@gmail.com. And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me,
Eric Oldman.
And Eric, we have had the pleasure tonight to speak to Mr. Ed Pierce of KOLO, Reno, Nevada News. Boy, and we have been covering the Mark and Debby Constantinos story, and we're getting a different angle from someone that really dug into it. And I gotta say, it's really nice to have somebody like Ed on the air with us, kind of cutting through the BS kind of stuff. I mean, this is the facts. This is what's going on. Because there's a lot of rumors, a lot of hearsay, there's a lot of everything right now floating around about this case.
It's why it's still so important, even in this day and age, this global day and age, where to have boots on the ground and to have people who are local and who can go and actually observe for themselves, to talk to people directly. And I think no matter how technologically complex we get, no matter how good the technology gets as far as communicating where it feels like you're there, it's never going to be the same as being there on the ground. And it's all local.
And Ed and Eric, I've heard everything from demons made them do it to you name it, as far as excuses go. And so, again, it's refreshing and it's much needed to have, like Eric just said, the boots in the ground analysis of the real facts.
I want to toss out to Ed, because this is so contradictory to, the normal news, investigative, hard-boiled facts. And like you say, someone who's been around and been in the biz as long as you have, this story, when you take out the rock star paranormal investigator, EVP specialist, which we haven't even mentioned that part yet, out of it, is depressingly common. This is a escalating, long-term, it would appear, domestic dispute, love-hate relationship that crossed over at some point and ends up with everyone involved dead. Couldn't be a whole lot more depressing. What I want to bring up to you, though, which does refer back kind of to the paranormal aspect, in the interview that I did with them 2 years ago, it's really more like 2.5 years ago, one of the things that really struck me about that interview, first of all, they were very forthright, and they didn't seem to be particularly veiled about anything. In other words, these people who are such good performers and for the most part had kind of fooled the world as to the nature of their relationship, they were actually pretty open about it when we were chatting. But the thing that I got back to, and Joel picked this up when he listened to that interview too, is She made it very clear in no uncertain terms that very negative energy had got into their house, and it may have been, he was accusing her of just being too open and basically inviting spirits in because she was a medium and he was not. She was much more sensitive to the paranormal world than he was. In fact, he hadn't really been involved in it till he met her.
No.
Back in the, I guess, late 80s. And so, anyway, in their home, literally, she talked about how she had such a hard time sleeping because she was always being bothered by spirits, but that recently it had really kind of taken a turn for the negative, and it was really weighing on both of them, this very heavy negative atmosphere, and they'd even brought in a shaman to bless the place, and I forget what other steps they had taken, but it was something they were taking very seriously. And while I certainly do not ever leap to give people, an excuse away from personal responsibility, and I think ultimately the bottom line is there was a guy who just, something pushed him over the edge, he snapped, and this escalating violence just became one of nihilism and despair. Nothing else matters. No one's going to survive this. Certainly not she or I. And that was it. But nonetheless, that interview and the timing of it 2.5 years ago does lend at least some credence, some credibility to the notion that it's at least possible that they were, he, she, or both of them, did face some kind of influence from spiritual entities. What are your thoughts on that?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Well, I guess again, I have to come at this as being still pretty much agnostic about the paranormal. I don't deny it, and I don't deny what other people believe and what and their experiences. That isn't my place. I would just make the observation again that it doesn't take 27 years of marriage. A lot of marriages go bad. They don't go this bad, but it doesn't take conjuring up demons to I believe to force a man to get this violent in a dispute at the end of a long relationship that was also a business relationship.
Sure.
With his wife. And like I said, this happens all the time. You take the their status in paranormal world out of it, and and you can find this story in some newspaper across the country every day. You really can. And so, does that require demons? No, it doesn't. So, I can't speak to dark forces, but clearly there were dark forces. Whether they were anything beyond our understanding, I couldn't say.
Yeah, well, I believe that personal accountability is still personal accountability. Demon or no demon, he chose his actions, in my opinion. And that's
it is an extreme case in that how it ended, and that and the involvement of their daughter. I mean, is still a puzzling detail that defies explanation. Maybe we'll get one when her court case comes up. I don't know, but we don't have it at this point.
Yes, exactly.
I've heard that there's the kinds of things, the rumors flying around, speculation like you're mentioning, but people don't need to think that anything special has happened here. I mean, it's depressingly familiar.
Yeah, and like we've said up and down the show, that's the bad part. I mean, that's the part that really hurts, because like you said and Eric said, it's just every day. I shouldn't say normal, because God, I don't want to use the word normal, but it's everyday happening. Unfortunately,
it's common.
It happens all the time, and I can tell you here in Reno, over the past year or so, the shelters have been running at capacity, and so there are actually women out there tonight in abusive relationships and families in abusive relationships with young children. that are staying in those relationships simply because there's no space in the shelter, and so they can't make that call.
Sure. In fact, I'm calling in Jadine Solderberg. She requested.
Solberg.
Yep. She requested that we call.
Hello.
Hello, Jadine. This is Joel Sturgis calling from After Hours AM. Boy, we understand. This is, of course, we have Ed with us as well. You worked with Ed, of course, on news stories before. And
Hi, Jadine.
Hi, Ed. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good. Well, we kind of wanted to get you to weigh in on the unfortunate circumstances of Mark and Debby Constantino, if you'd be willing to do so, ma'am.
I will. Let me plug my phone in. Hang on, because I'm getting ready to die. Hold on real quick.
Sure. Not a problem. But while she's doing that, again, I have to give out the domestic violence hotline number, which is 1-800-799-7233. Again, 1-800-799-7233. I can't say that number enough because, quite honestly, I do believe that places like this have saved lives. I know Ed would agree with me as well as Eric. And so if you are finding yourself in a similar situation, even if you are afraid for your life, even if violence hasn't happened yet, but the threat has been levied, call.
And you know
now.
what? Let's talk about it on the other side, too. If you're someone who feels rage welling within you, whether you're the male or the female, it doesn't matter, in a relationship, and you are getting to the point, it's escalating, and it's getting to the point where you can no longer control it, and you fear for the safety of your partner, do something about it. Be proactive about it.
Exactly. Don't wait till we talk about you next on After Hours AM.
Absolutely. There's help out there for the guys, too.
Yes, absolutely.
And something short of going to something like the Committee to Aid Abused Women. I mean, there's marriage counselors.
Well, Ed, you're absolutely correct, because the little known fact is men also get abused. Men are not immune from this. They're also
it can happen.
They're also victims.
Physically, physically they're at the advantage, and so it's usually the woman that's the victim, and understandably so.
Yes. In my marriage, my wife is the boss, and I just say yes, ma'am. But yes, I totally know where you're coming from.
Seriously, if women, it kind of doesn't matter what size they are if they're willing to use weapons.
Well, this is true. That's another X factor that is unfortunately out there.
So, yes, I wanted to just before we lose Ed, and we really appreciate you staying on. You're ending up being
sure.
the key guest here, and really giving background, some shadow here as well as light, and fleshing things out and keeping us grounded. I think. What's your guess in terms of how this is going to play out? In terms of what they're going to find, do you think from the toxicology reports? Do you think there will be either or both under the influence? And do you what's your guess on how things are going to end up with the daughters? Why have we not heard really anything about the other daughter? Do you think?
Well, I think because it's still under investigation. The incident itself, I can't say for certain whether the August incident that she's charged in, the daughter is charged in, is still under investigation. But
sure.
That court appearance hasn't happened yet, so we don't have a lot of information about that. I'm going to be very curious to find out what we find out about her involvement in this and the reasons for it. And we'll see what she puts up for a defense.
Ed, would you mind coming back on the show when the story unfolds and talk with us about it?
No, give me a call. Sure.
Would love to have you back on. And,
sure.
And we can.
Do we have Jadine with us back?
Yes, I'm back.
Hi, Jadine. Very nice to meet you. Wish it was under better circumstances.
Yes, I wish it was.
I from what I understand, and Ed speaks very highly of you, by the way.
Thank you, Ed.
You knew the Constantinos.
You're welcome.
On a personal level.
Well, I knew them through the paranormal field. I didn't work one-on-one with them. I've seen them in passing. Some of my group members have known them personally. I only got to know Mark probably the last couple of weeks of his life. on social media. And me being a victim of, spousal abuse years and years ago, it touched home with me. So when this all unfolded at the very beginning when he was arrested, I reached out to Debby Constantinos, and I just, put a kind word on private message and said, hey, if you need anybody to talk to, we're here.
Mm-hmm.
And the response I got back was, okay, thanks, basically nothing more than that.
Yeah.
And then Mark, when he friended me about 3 weeks ago, I want to say now, maybe a little bit longer, we started private messaging. And, I reached out to him and I said, look, we're behind you. I said, this kind of comes as a shock, and if you need anything, let us know. And then the night before he passed, or all this happened, he had posted that he was, doing great. He was watching a football game. He's doing better than he ever was before. And I reached out and I said, hey, let's hang out. I said, good for you. I'm glad things are going well.
Mm-hmm.
And he responded back, will do. It was basically, hey, I'm moving forward. That's how I took it.
Sure.
And a couple of my friends also reached out to him as well. And then this all unfolded the next morning, and we were all in shock. I mean, the whole community here.
I was just about to ask you, how did the paranormal community take it when the news was released?
Well, from about 3:55 p.m. the day that it happened, my phone blew up. I had 32 phone calls. I had people from New York reaching out to me, people from Florida saying, is it true? Is it true? And, not even knowing all the circumstances of what had gone on, I knew about as what they knew.
Mm-hmm.
And, Ed reached out to me that night, and we talked, I think, the next day. And I was in shock. I was in total shock watching this play out in social media and on the news. The community, my group alone, and several of my members have worked with the Constantinos, and several people, outstanding people in our community here in Northern Nevada, have actually worked with them. We're really good friends with them.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's in shock. This happened in our backyard, and we knew nothing of any marital problem, money problem. We didn't know any of this until it played out on the social media.
And unfortunately, oftentimes, that's when it all comes out, when a tragedy like this does unfold. And that's a sad part.
Absolutely.
No steps are taken to remedy in the way of marriage counseling or whatever else needs to be done, because quite honestly, nothing warrants this kind of action.
Right.
Myself and Eric, we only know them as radio hosts. We don't know them on a personal level. We both have interviewed them at one time or another. But being in the paranormal community, knowing them like you do, or knowing of them and having enough relationship with them to speak with them, they never gave you an inclination, or anyone else that you really knew, of the marital problems. I mean, they were really then masters of keeping a hush-hush.
Absolutely. They kept their private life completely private, off Facebook, off Twitter. I never saw any harsh posts against each other until probably the last, 4 weeks when it all started to unfold. They were masters in our community as far as the EVP experts. I've worked also with Tom and Lisa Butler. They actually go to my church, or they're the pastors of our church.
Sure.
And they're in shock. Everybody is just in shock that this all happened. Mm-hmm. What is sad is now the paranormal community is taking sides. It's his side, her side, and not the true side. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got their own opinion. Everybody's saying that she was possessed, he was possessed. And I just, I'm staying out of it.
Yeah.
I want them to rest in peace. I want the family to heal. The poor family has got to be going through hell and back.
Well, because as a radio host, and Eric and I have I don't mean to thump our chest, but have a very large listenership. And people have come to me saying, giving us their 2 cents. Oh, gosh, it was demons that made him do it. It was this, or it was that. I don't care what... If it was demons or not, we all still have free will, and we all still make our own decisions. Ed Pierce, KOLO, Mr. Ed here, we were talking about that very thing before we brought you into the conversation, that that unfortunately he sees it and we all see it all too often. The only thing is a spotlight shed on them because of who they were. Right. Now, being a victim of domestic violence in the past yourself, do you got any of the words of advice for anyone that's listening right now that you could help today?
Call, talk. You know, if you're being abused or you're an abuser, there is help out there. There is so much help out there. If by the grace of God that I had friends and family that took me in and my son in, it was an amazing factor that I knew that I had free choice, that I could get out of it and I could move forward. It took me years to move forward, but I did, and I'm succeeding. So if anything, you can get out of it. There is help. Even though you don't think there is and you're at the end of your rope, look at your blessings, that you're still alive, that you're still above ground, and that you have that free will to call and get help.
Yeah, I'll just chime in here to say the one positive thing to come out of this, maybe the only positive thing, is it's allowed us to have that conversation again, and here we are having it on national radio, and you know, it's unfortunate that we only have this conversation when you know, when somebody
tragedy happens.
Yes. Yeah, when a tragedy happens, and the bigger the profile of the people involved, the more the conversation goes on. That's just a fact of life. But it is good that we're having this conversation. That's the sad thing is that, you know, it obviously didn't need to happen in the first place. But,
no, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct.
Do you guys?
And I think that they all need to rest in peace. I mean, we need to let this go and let the families heal now. Both sides, Mark's family, Debbie's side, the paranormal family needs to heal. We need to come together, and we could agree to disagree on what happened, on who did it, on, you know, obviously we know who did it, but you know what I mean? I think
the
that
underlying
we need
cause, sure. It's a he said, she said kind of situation. I'm sure there was shared culpability to a certain extent, you know, just like in any relationship, but it would appear that he was the one who allowed things to, you know, get ultimately out of hand. But, you know, we don't know what her role was. When I talked to them, when I interviewed him, you know, she did pick at him. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean you're allowed to kill her.
No, that's the truth. My wife picks at me once in a while, I'll be completely honest, and that's just part of what it is sometimes be married.
Women.
Let's not go there. We have a lot of female listeners, so let's not tread down that earth. But
hopefully people understand the sarcasm there. But what I was going to ask before we run out of time, I'm very interested to hear both of your thoughts on this. Do you foresee a time, just with all the various advances, both on the kind of the technological side and on the neurological side, and perhaps even somehow, some way on the spiritual side, do you think we're going to get to a point where we're better able to predict these kinds of things?
Well, I'll go first. I don't. You know, I wish I could be more optimistic about this. I think this is. Each one of these stories has its own backdrop and the reasons why it happens, but it happens with depressing regularity in our society. The only thing that's going to slow it down is for the rest of us out there, is for the victims to speak up, one, but for the rest of us out there not to turn a blind eye when a coworker shows up with bruises, we need to, as a community, as a worldwide community, we need to get involved and bring individual cases to some kind of more peaceful conclusion.
I would wholeheartedly agree with you.
I couldn't agree with more with that. But it's not just the physical abuses. If you see someone is cowering down and being withdrawn, you know, ask, talk, speak up. You know, be a friend. Be someone that they could lean on or listen to. That's the only thing I could recommend. I mean, being there myself, I understood. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, the sad part is, that they are just now another, just another number, put in there now of just the stats of how this goes down. That's the sad part. That really is. Things could have been done I'm sure on both parties that could have stopped it. And I guess that's just the best words of wisdom we all could give is if you see something, say something. If you see someone struggling with abuse, be that person to tell them, hey, there is a way out of this.
Absolutely.
And you owe it to yourself and your children and your friends and your family to deal with it. Don't accept
Exactly.
it.
Well, guys, unfortunately, we're at the end of the show. I would like to thank Mr. Ed Pierce of KOLO, Reno, Nevada, for coming on. Great interview with him. And I'd also really like to thank, we have Janine on with us as well. Jadine, that's a great name, by the way. I like that name. J.D. Solberg on, and she really kind of put in perspective who they were as people as well. Again, guys, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Sure.
Real quick, what is the name? I'm sorry to interrupt. What is the name of your organization, Jadine?
It's Northern Nevada Ghost Hunters.
Okay, thanks.
Well, that being said, everybody, love each other, take care of each other. Tune in next time for another great episode of After Hours AM. Till then, well, keep taking a look, and remember, take care, like I said, take care of each other. Can't stress that enough. Thank you for listening to this edition of After Hours AM, and please remember to like us on Facebook and also follow us over on Twitter.